It hit everyone like a ton of bricks when the exact scenario you described started playing out in real life. And now they are staring at you like you've got some kind of hidden shortcut to the truth. They are struggling to wrap their heads around the fact that while they were all distracted by the surface level noise, you were already miles ahead, looking at the structural weaknesses that were bound to give way. It is a very grounded, human kind of shock that happens when people realize they've been sleepwalking through a situation that you were analyzing with total clarity. They want to believe it was a lucky guess because the alternative, that you simply pay more attention and think more clearly than they do, is a lot harder for their egos to swallow. You didn't need a crystal ball or a secret source of information. You just stayed grounded in the facts and refused to let the common delusions of the group cloud your personal judgment. Now that the dust has settled and the reality is undeniable, your reputation has shifted from being the quiet one to being the person who actually understands how the world works. And that realization is causing a massive amount of internal friction for everyone who once doubted your perspective. The reason they are in such a state of shock is that most people are conditioned to look at the world through a lens of wishful thinking and social consensus. They wait for the news or the experts to tell them how to feel, whereas you've developed a habit of looking at the raw data of human behavior and drawing your own conclusions. You noticed the small shifts in the atmosphere, the subtle changes in how people were talking, and the tiny cracks in the foundation that everyone else was trying to paint over with toxic positivity. To you, the outcome wasn't a surprise. It was the only logical destination for a train that had been heading down those tracks for months. You stayed classy by not making a big scene or trying to force your view on people who weren't ready to hear it, but you also didn't back down from what you knew to be true. This kind of mental independence is what makes you look like a visionary to people who are used to being told what to think by the loudest person in the room. You've proven that the most effective way to see the future is simply to be honest about the present, even when that truth is uncomfortable or unpopular. They keep asking you for your secret, as if there is some complex formula or dark strategy that you are keeping locked away in a safe. The reality is much more relatable. You just stopped letting people's words distract you from their actual intentions. You've learned that in any community or workplace, what people say is usually just a cover for what they are actually feeling or planning. By focusing on the incentives and the basic human needs for status, safety, and power, you were able to map out the likely moves before they were even made. This isn't about being a mastermind. It's just about being a realist who isn't afraid to look at the messy parts of life. While they were busy participating in the drama, you were busy auditing the situation, and that difference in focus is why you were ready, while they were caught completely off guard. You didn't need to be a genius to see it coming. You just needed to be the only person in the room who wasn't lying to themselves about the state of the game. There is a real gangster edge to being the person who stays calm and correct when everyone else is falling apart because they didn't see the hit coming. Your ability to call the shot before the ball was even in play has given you a level of authority that no title or promotion could ever provide. People are looking at you differently now, with a mix of respect and a little bit of healthy caution, because they realize you can't be fooled by the usual social scripts. You've elevated yourself by showing that you have a higher bandwidth for reality than the average person. While they are still trying to process the shock of the event, you are already moving on to the next phase because you processed this outcome weeks ago in your own mind. This grounded readiness is what separates the people who lead from the people who just react. And you have firmly placed yourself in the first category without ever having to raise your voice or demand attention. You simply stood your ground on the truth, and eventually, the truth came around to stand with you. The most relatable part of this entire experience is the feeling of being the only sane person in a room full of people who are ignoring a fire. You likely spent a lot of time wondering why nobody else could see the obvious red flags that were popping up everywhere. It can be a lonely place to be the one who sees ahead. But the payoff comes when the reality finally lands and everyone turns to you for guidance. You didn't use this insight to hurt anyone or to manipulate the situation. You used it to protect your own peace and stay ahead of the curve. Now that you've been proven right, you don't feel the need to gloat or say, "I told you so," because the results are doing all that work for you. You stayed classy throughout the entire process, which has only added to your new status as the unofficial strategist of your circle. People are starting to realize that your intense focus wasn't a personality quirk, but a highly developed survival skill that they now wish they had cultivated for themselves. They are struggling to process your speed because they don't realize that your prediction was actually just the final step in a long process of observation. Most people wait until a problem is 100% visible before they acknowledge it. But you've learned to spot it when it's only at 10%. You saw the first 10% and projected the rest, while they were still busy arguing about whether the first 10% even existed. This gap in awareness is what makes you seem so fast. But it's really just a matter of you having a lower threshold for evidence. You don't need a house to fall down to know the foundation is rotting. You just need to see the first crack. This grounded approach to life is what keeps you out of the mud and on the high ground. And it's why you're the only one not covered in the fallout of the current mess. You've mastered the art of being proactive in a world that is almost entirely reactive. And that is the ultimate advantage in any environment. There is a profound sense of self-improvement that comes from realizing you can trust your own gut over the collective wisdom of a group. You've spent time refining your instincts and stripping away the emotional baggage that used to slow down your thinking. This means that when a crisis starts to brew, you aren't wasting time feeling shocked or offended. You're just looking for the exit or the solution. They are in disbelief because they can't imagine having that level of mental clarity. But you know it's just a result of the daily work you've put in to stay grounded and real. You've turned yourself into a human early warning system, and the people around you are now realizing that ignoring you is the most expensive mistake they can make. This shift in the power dynamic is permanent. They can never see the fact that you knew what was happening long before they did. You've effectively become the benchmark for what it means to be truly aware in a world full of distractions. It's actually quite funny to watch them try to rationalize your accuracy by coming up with elaborate theories about how you really knew. They would rather believe you have some kind of secret shit going on than admit that you were simply more disciplined and less emotional than they were. By refusing to engage in their conspiracy theories and just sticking to the facts, you are maintaining a level of class that keeps you above the fray. You don't need to explain your process because the results are undeniable. You are the strategist who stayed grounded while everyone else was floating in a cloud of denial. And now you are the only one with a clear path forward. This experience has solidified your confidence in a way that no amount of external validation ever could. You know you were right. And more importantly, you know why you were right, which means you can do it again whenever you need to. You have cracked the game of life by simply refusing to play pretend with people who aren't ready for the truth. The community or group that once doubted you is now forced to look at you as the one who held the map all along. This elevation is the ultimate form of winning because it doesn't require you to be a bully or a loudmouth. You just have to be the most reliable person in the room. They see that you're gangster. Edge is really just your ability to stay focused on reality when everyone else is distracted by the drama. You've become the person people want to be near when things get uncertain, which is a massive amount of social leverage that you've earned through pure competence. You stayed relatable by not rubbing their noses in their mistakes, but you also stayed firm in your position as the person who saw it first. This balance is what makes you a true leader and a person of real substance. You have used your insight to build a life that is stable and successful, while the people who ignored you are still trying to figure out what hit them.